I think we can go ahead and start. I'm supposed to be. Okay, so if it loads. This is my panel on fiction lifestyling. I will talk for about 20, 25 minutes ish. And then we'll have a Q&A and talk about everything. This is a repeat of the panel I did at OtherCon. The difference being, I'm probably going to phrase things a little differently. I'm probably going to remember to say a few more things that I forgot to the first time. I also have some soul bonds pretty close, so they might comment on things. Um, and this is being recorded. Like I said earlier, if you just got here, there might be a little background noise. I apologize if there is. Um, when I am looking at my slideshow, I cannot see the chat. So if you have any questions you want me to answer, put them not in the panel chat where all of you guys were talking earlier, but put them in the panel questions channel so that I don't lose them. Um, and during the Q&A, I'll try to bounce back and forth between those two channels. But if you put everything in panel questions that you really want me to see, that will make it a lot easier. So getting into it, my name is Willa Rosenberg, and I'm part of the Collective Unconscious, which is my soul bonding system. That is a portrait my fiance made of me for our anniversary a little while ago. I use a lot of pronouns. I use they, them, she, her, it's, a, air, am, soul, souls, vamp, vamps, and fey, fair. I like it when you mix them up, but I know that that is a lot. So if it's easier for you to just pick a few and alternate between those, that's totally fine. I am fiction folk. I am trans-species. I am an archetroper, and I am a soul bonder. Um, being trans-species specifically, I am a lot of different kinds of animals and creatures, but most prominently for the past little bit, I've been a cat. I have been cat shifted for about a week straight, and cat is what I have the most desire to transition towards. In my archetype, I am an archetyper around the magician tarot card, along with a few others, and I'll get into that more during this presentation. I am the admin of the Independent Otherkin Wiki, along with Waggles, who is my fellow admin. Um, we have a Discord. I don't think either of us have put it in advertisements, but I can do that. Um, my personal site is at petrichorin.wtf. Forgot to mention this. I will share the slides and a list of all the links I have at the end. My system and I are collectively queer and disabled and have autism and ADHD. Um, we have different varieties of how these things affect us and like what variety of queer we are, but generally. Um, Most of us are from Buffy the Vampire Slayer or Dark Shadows. I'm from Buffy. We have most from Dark Shadows from the 60s, the glorified improv show. It's a fun time. And being fiction folk is the most integral identity for all of us. For me, I was the first one in this body. I was reincarnated here. And then as a soul bonder, I unintentionally, but it was a magnificent thing for all of us, brought these people from these worlds in that I felt connected to, whether they be that I knew them from my world or I felt seen by their stories or I was just really interested in them. So we experience being fictional characters in a little bit of a different way, but it is all our most integral identity. It is the first thing about us. You call us a fictional character, that is a good description. And in the way we experience it, yes, we are specific fictional characters, but we're also just fictional in kind of like a conceptual way. So I've been using the term fiction folk this whole time instead of thinking kin or fictive, and I don't want to leave anyone behind who might not be aware of exactly what it means. It's an umbrella term for all fictional identities, basically. You have fiction kin and fictives in there, but you also have people with sympaths and heart homes, and people who have fictional archetypes or just some ultra normal connection to fiction, even if they are not a fictional character themselves. It was coined independently a few times. My first introduction was in the Alt plus H Discord server, and I decided to use it as a primary label instead of fictionkin. That's for multiple reasons. Some of the terminology around fictionkin, I personally don't feel like fits my identity. It's just a personal preference. I'm just being a little picky. Fictionkin, awesome label. I don't feel very represented by it. But honestly, a bigger reason was that I'm not just a character, I live as one. And many fiction can fit that exact same criteria, get me wrong. But that is just so integral to me that my I would feel most represented by a label that expresses that. It's like almost like a transition. It feels very similar to being transspecies. I use transspecies as my primary non-human identity label because it describes how I seek to live as a cat and live as a dragon, or whatever. And it demonstrates how I relate to the world around me. So, what's fiction lifestyling then? That is this living as a character experience, almost like a transition, making intentional choices to live as your fictional self. Also first heard this term in Alpha's Age, coming from the term fairy lifestyler, um, which a fairy lifestyler would be someone who lives as their persona, calls themselves whatever animal their persona is, maybe goes by their persona's name, might feel more themselves in their fursuit than anything else. Um, and so fiction lifestyle is very similar. It was originally used to describe people in the message where I first saw it, who legally changed their names to their fictive types, align their fashion sense and their interests and how they pursue their life with their careers and goals with who they are fictionally. It's that living as a fictional character. Um, I don't consider this coining a term from my experiences. I consider this modifying for a lifestyler, adopting a term that best fits me. And something I like about it is that it's inclusive of all fiction folk, like how you be a furry lifestyler and a Therian and transspecies, whatever. You can be a fiction lifestyler and be fiction again. You could be a fiction lifestyler and be a fictive or have a heart home. Or honestly, you could be a fiction lifestyler even if you aren't a fictional character or don't have a connection to a fictional character other than fiction lifestyling. I would argue that being a fiction lifestyler would make you fiction folk because you do have that connection to fiction. But it's definitely not something that I am saying only people who are absolutely fictional characters like me can experience. I have this image here of I was just writing a letter to someone, and I wrote my name, and just naturally the G on the end felt like something that I want to include in my signature for my name. So I included this image to be like a little look into the process of fiction lifestyling for me. What does that look like? You can say that I'm making these changes that align with myself, and my soul bonds do this as well, but that's not very concrete. So, to give some examples of what this actually looks like for us, um, we change how we present physically. Um, my fashion sense, I try to align with what it would have been. I dye my hair. Um, Eventually, my salons want to get wigs additionally. Um, we decided that since I'm out 99% of the time, like, and we also have several other redheads in the system that I can have the real hair. Um, one of my salons did mine and her nails a lot in the past. So we do that now. We're experimenting with makeup, using makeup in ways that we like or that kind of shape our face differently. And for me, I'm interested in makeup to make me look more like a cat. Also with scent, different perfumes that we might have had back then, or that just feel like us. We also want to experiment more with changing our voice intentionally, making our voice more like our true selves, and also differentiating our other voice. We right now pretty much have the same voice. Also, our hobbies. I learned how to code. I'm not great at it, but I don't think I ever really was. Um, but I learned how to code because I was like, oh, this is something that I really loved once upon a time. I want to see if I still enjoy this, and I do. We create art and take care of plants as an expression of who we are and used to be. Most of us are, I say most of us, all of us are from either a different time period or a different dimension or both. Different dimension, not in just a world that is not exactly this one, but different dimension as in totally different situation, like our time periods wouldn't translate. So we try to consume media from our time periods or do things in general that match our time periods. Um, for us, that includes using older tech. I love computers. I was the computer person. I am still the computer person. I think modern computers are not as good or fun as old computers, so I still like the computers from my time period a lot. Um, Pictured here is an Apple IIe that I dug out of my grandma's closet and got to work. Yeah, but you can't use ancient computers all the time. I try to when I can. We use an iPod and DVDs and CDs a lot because it just feels more natural to us. We try to limit our phone time because it's just good for us in general, feels more grounding, but that grounding is in who we are. Um, Lifestyle things like architropy and witchcraft and learning languages been great for us as well. My Solons from Dark Shadows, both of their first language was French, and they came here knowing absolutely no French. So we are trying to relearn that for them. So I mentioned architropy. You may have seen the architropy panel by Veet. Here I have linked when they presented it at Epicon. Um, but architropy is the experience of living as an archetype or trope or something along those lines. There's a big focus on narratives, and you can use architropy to embody narratives or roles that you would have had. And I think it's compatible with fiction lifestyling, or fiction lifestyling can be architropy and vice versa. I think it could be just a Venn diagram uniquely different for different people. I have linked TV tropes because I think it's a good source for if you want to find an archetype that is related to a fictional identity. Because you can search by specific tropes, also by specific media or characters, and come up with things that might fit your life now. And also, Ontopunk. Um, excuse me. Ontopunk is a excuse me again, an alter human punk movement about being proud to be who we are and supporting those who are marginalized, including people in the community, people who aren't terraform animals who are being mistreated. There's a big focus on DIY and gear and body mods and using that to present as yourself, which is fin lifestyling to me. To me, my fiction lifestyling is ontopunk and vice versa. I use a lot of DIY in my fiction lifestyling. If there's something that, like some jewelry or clothes that I want to have that I had once upon a time, and I can't buy it or don't want to, I'll just make it. Um, so I wanted to mention Ontopunk and how it is, again, a Venn diagram with fictional lifestyling. And I have here the DIY or Die panel by the Sidewalk Talk System about Ontopunk from a past OtherCon, which was what introduced me to Ontopunk and I think is a very good resource for starting out, learning what it's all about. So these are just a few images of fiction lifestyle. I think it's a little bit hard to depict it exactly in some of its hobbies, some of it is mentality, lifestyle change. But this is focusing more on the physical things. The first image, this was when I first dyed my hair and felt represented by it, felt like me. I remember taking that picture and just looking at how it looked in the camera and feeling really happy. Second picture was when I got my first crocheted hat, and that made me feel very euphoric, very like me. I thought about wearing that hat today, but it's just too hot right now. And then these other two pictures are of my battle jacket. Um, when this picture was taken, they were all the patches were just clipped on. I am most of the way finished with it, finished as you can get with a battle jacket. But I have references to my source on there. I want to point out the DIY or die patch that I made after seeing that panel. I, I have this patch that I got from a T-shirt that felt like me, and I have my fictional character patch at the very top. So it was a labor of love. Felt like me. We're getting to the Q&A and brainstorming, and I had one more thing I wanted to say that I forgot. So really quickly, fiction lifestyling is about finding who you are and embodying it. It's not about forcing yourself to be the person you used to be if that's not who you are now. When I say that I explore media I would have liked or had access to or hobbies and that kind of thing, I'm not forcing myself to like it. I'm trying it out to see if it still holds up, feels representative of me. Same thing with the new hobbies. I'm finding new hobbies all the time. It's less of making yourself be the same person you were exactly, and more of, for me at least, from my perspective of having been reincarnated, covering what I've lost that I want and still moving on. Because even if I hadn't died and been reincarnated, I would have still changed as time went on. I still would have found new interests. So it's not limiting to me, and I don't think it should be limiting. That I'm encouraging. So, Q&A and brainstorming. If you have any questions, if I mentioned anything you'd like to know more about, um, if you have some ideas of things you want to do, but they might be a little hard to tackle because sometimes it can be. Um, this is your time to talk about it. Let's have a conversation going. Um, and also, if you want to hear from my soul bonds, they might also chime in with questions since they're close enough to, if they feel it's relevant to them. So I will exit this. About my screen sharing. There we go. Okay. So there's nothing in panel questions yet. Someone is typing a question. Um, so I think I'm going to be okay to bounce back and forth. I totally agree. You're never going to be fully identical to how you were in source self because time has changed and you have therefore changed and grown as a person because that's how people work. Exactly right. When I say I am 1,000% Willow Rosenberg, that is exactly who I am. I don't mean that I'm going to exactly like I did on screen. I don't want to act like exactly like I did on screen. I want to be a better person than that. But it's about who I am as an identity and out the trajectory I'm going and the ways I want to grow and just who I am, my reality. Gaspedot says, sorry, not really a question. We just wanted to say thank you for this panel. We do similar things in living as ourselves as much as we can in this life. It's nice to know we're not alone in being serious about our fiction folk identities. Thank you for telling me that. That is very nice to hear. That makes me feel really good. I'm kind of making the panel I wanted to see when I first realized what fiction can were. Because I have known who I am for several years, but it has been slightly more recently when I got involved in Alter Humanity, just because I wasn't exactly sure where I fit and was still learning about myself, learning what was and wasn't okay to do. And then I had the encouragement from good Alter Human communities once I finally got the courage that if it anything's okay as long as you're not hurting anybody. You being yourself and being totally weird is a good thing actually. Alexa says, one way that I embody my connection to fictionality is playing background music from media. Love in my headphones. I love in my from media. I love in my headphones when I do things that feel like living out of media. That makes sense. That does make sense. I use music, media words, a lot to connect with myself too, both in like what would have been released in my past life, um, source soundtracks. So for my animal identities, I have a lot of like cat cafe playlists that I listen to while I do schoolwork. You're welcome, Lady Baphomet Society, if you're still here. I really appreciate you coming. Several people are typing. Ooh. On your battle jacket, there's a patch that had a corner missing. What's the full word? Really good at. I'm not sure what site you're talking about. One of them, the back is a crow patch with the phrase "respect the locals" on it, and the other one that um, is cut off says "Be brave, live." It's a quote from my source. Odek says, "I admit to not being super familiar with your source, but I'm interested in hearing about how you navigated the differences in how magic works between here and there, as someone whose fictional identity is similarly tied to that sort of thing." Yeah, that is a big thing for me because I come from a world where you do magic and you can make things appear right in front of you and it be like a very physical, tangible thing. And in this world, that's not exactly how it works. Um, so I have been kind of trying to recreate my magical path here, which is kind of difficult. But some ways that I have done it are like taking a spell that I did, seeing how when in this world it might work. Like, okay, I had done this protection spell that caused a literal force field. In this world, maybe I could do that same spell and it caused more of a metaphorical force field, um, maybe like an astral thing that is there, but obviously a little different, can't stop physical attacks. Um, my source, we used a lot of Latin for spells, so I am learning some Latin. I took a Latin class in high school, but forgot most of it. So I'm relearning that. Yeah, it's a lot of looking back at my source, looking at how magic works now and finding the crossover. And in some ways, I like how magic works here better. Do I miss having the powers I did? Yeah, but there were times when that was not good for me or anybody else. So maybe it's a good thing in some ways. Alexa says another example, though it's kind of niche. I discovered that I may have very mild visual snow. There's a colorful film grain over the whole world, and considering that as a fictional thing. I don't know if that will work for me since I don't really have a source of his old movies. The closest that relates to this on the TV Glow. I don't think you would necessarily have to have a source that is old movies for that to be a fictional thing. As long as it's like it makes you feel like you're in a TV show or connected to a TV show or however you want to consider that. I think that is really a really cool connection to being fictional. And I don't think you have to have a specific source for that. It could be more of a conceptual thing. Solar Wind says, also not a question, but I wanted to say that lifestyling is something I've begun to do subtly. I'm excited to learn that that's an actual thing. Perhaps maybe how do you manage wanting different things for your lifestyle? Maybe, for example, I am fiction folk as characters with very differing appearances and personalities. How this makes sense? Yes, it does. I don't really experience this. I am only one fictional character, but I also have a system full of fictional characters, and I am also a cat, um, and a lot of other animals. Um, for us, when it's I know someone else is going to want to front or just be around, will kind of dress like them or do other things to cater to them on that day. Um, so if you experience shifts or feeling more connected in some way to one character on a certain day, you could kind of time it. If you don't, maybe you could schedule it out or try to combine the aspects you feel most connected to into one thing, maybe. For me, I kind of tried to combine being a cat and being a fictional character. I believe I've always been a cat. Um, honestly, like the 9 lives thing, I wonder if that has something to do with me reincarnated having a second life. So I kind of approach my animalistic identity as well. Rosenberg was not human. Um, like I'm a calico cat because of having red hair that fits things like that. And when it comes to fiction lifestyling, like I was talking about earlier before the panel started, I'm wearing a collar right now. My outfit is totally me from source, not really cat, but I am wearing a collar. So finding try to find crossover and try to incorporate multiple things. Alexa says, "What exactly does being fictional mean to you? Was it being imaginary, having a creator, existing in the space between real and unreal?" It is kind of for me existing in the space between real and unreal. And but primarily, I think it's my life has been shown on screen. Some people don't feel this way. They might feel that it was just a coincidence or that their source reflects their life. But for me, I genuinely feel like my source was about my life. And now I am here in a world where it is fiction. So the fact that there was a story written and televised about me is what I consider how I consider myself to be a fictional character. Um, and in a sense that is existing in the space between real and unreal because I'm a real person. My experiences were real. But people know about them and consider them imaginary. So there is that overlap. And I'm also interested in other people's answers because that is a question um, that I really like pondering. Lisa, society needs to invent ship shifting for real. Yeah, yeah. Alexa says that was a beautiful and really insightful answer. Thank you for sharing. You're welcome. I accidentally clicking on the creature feature channel instead of panel questions when I'm flip flopping between the stage and panel questions. Jeff says I don't actually think about that much to be honest. I just see myself as just myself. stuck inside a different world, in a different body, different circumstances, similar to my experience as well. I just think about it more. Leon says, "It's hard to engage in that Buffy fandom. Do you avoid it entirely?" Yeah, well, I don't avoid it entirely, but I avoid I lurk. I avoid being known. Um, honestly, like, people not liking me or my depiction or even just stuff about bad things I did doesn't bother me that much because I'm like, yeah, I don't like who I was then either. And also, it's fiction. You're allowed to have opinions on fiction. Um, but the thing that bothers me is people to have a big debate about my sexuality because I'm a lesbian. I didn't know that at first, um, and dated a man, and the way it is portrayed is in a biphobic way. And I don't care if people think I'm bi. I'm sure there's a lot of versions of me that are and were. It's just an overblown argument, and no one wants. People act like if people act like believing I'm a lesbian is inherently biphobic, which sucks because me, as in this version of Willow talking to you, I am a lesbian. With Dark Shadows, it's less of a there are problems in the fandom, and more of the fandom is so small because it is a soap opera from the 60s that I think it would be very difficult to hide that we're fiction folk. And not that we have to, but given how small fandom is, I feel like that might be a little awkward at times. So we've just avoided that so far. And my Solons from Dark Shadows are from that area, less familiar with the internet, so that they don't care as much. Dodek says, "Do you ever feel like fictionality still kind of follows you, so to speak, as in getting the feeling that there are still narrative arcs and so forth in effect?" Yeah, sometimes it's kind of hard to put it into words, but I do. Sometimes I feel like events in my life kind of parallel my life now, parallel my past life. Um, like I was at a previous friend group that was not working, and I'm no longer friends with one of them, and one of them is my fiance now. But I really wanted us to be this trio of friends because it reminded me of my previous trio of friends. Um, and there are a lot of good parallels too, but with that one, I ended up putting in too much effort in this thing that didn't deserve any effort. But honestly, it's less of a narrative arc or anything like that. But I feel like I do kind of get recognized for being my fictional self without anyone realizing it. Like, obviously, my family does not know anything about this. They know I liked Buffy when we watched it. They don't even know that I still think about it. That's why I'm doing this panel at my university. Um, but they're still like, "Oh, you like old computers." My brother was going to get rid of his old Gateway 2000 and his old Windows XP computer, but I saved it in the trash and gave it to you. So, and I watched Buffy with my mom, and she was like, "Oh, Willa reminds me of you." So I feel like people realize in a way without realizing. Donna Wynn says, "When you get started, start with the hobbies or the more material side. How about you socially present to people?" Excuse me. It started with realizing that I was still me and that was okay. it kind of felt like I had to separate myself from my source for a while to be quote unquote presentable. Once I realized I didn't have to, I was like, oh, I want to dye my hair because that's giving me a lot of dysphoria. And I realized that dressing as myself made me feel really good. Um, and then I honestly didn't think about the hobby so much until it was already starting to happen. I think that probably happened around the same time, just with as I accepted who I was, it kind of came naturally. And then when I realized what I was doing and how much it was empowering me, I started to give a name to it and really expand on it consciously. What about how you socially present to people? I am kind of in the process of changing my name. I still go by my birth name in a lot of situations. I don't feel totally comfortable completely going by Willow yet because my my mom lives a mile away from my school. They're a little too involved in my life, in my school, I'm gonna be honest. But I am starting to introduce myself to friends as Willow. Say, hey, I'm changing my name. Um, when I like order food and they ask for her name, I give them Willow. Um, kind of in the process of that. And I don't always go into I believe I'm a fictional character reincarnated, but sometimes it's just, hey, I prefer this name. So call me that now. So I'm working on the socially because it's kind of hard to do in my situation right now, but it helps my fiance and their system know about everything and are very awesome about it. Alexa asks silly question depending on main character syndrome for fiction folk and fiction lifestylers. Sometimes you just are the main character, or sometimes you're just the sidekick or the villain. Serious question. Do you have any suggestions for responses? People who say that you're not being yourself, accepting yourself by seeing yourself presenting yourself as someone, as something that's considered fictional in this world. To an extent, if they don't trust you that this is the genuine presentation of yourself, then they're not going to trust you. But I think what I was talking about how you're not forcing yourself to be the same person you used to be, you're finding more ways to express yourself, and it's rediscovering who you are and continuing on as a person would be the thing I would respond to that. How it's not limiting. There's no rules. If there's a part of it that you don't want to do, you it doesn't feel genuine to you, you don't have to do it. Be what I would say, I guess. And I would say that too to people who are like, you say you're 1,000% this character, even if you don't, but you say that you don't act like yourself. Rare says they're from the sexuality context, but I can relate regarding my vague type if you entertain the idea of a gender diverse musume. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. A good chunk of fandom will crucify you and deem it sexist. Mind you, I am transmasculine, and I feel as though if I want to continue exploring this identity, I should have the freedom to brand myself how I choose, see myself in characters who I think are also transmasculine or masculine of center. It's my own way of expressing kinship towards them. I'm not sexist for relating myself to characters and seeing them as trans as well, let alone not wanting to degender myself in order to have this experience. Yes, yes. You can have a relationship to fiction, a relationship with the character, and that, whether or not that's canon, it'd be okay. I think people are quick to judge people's canons or relation to fiction. Me being fiction folk, fiction is not just what's written or on the screen or on the page. Fiction is also about your relationship to it. And sometimes that means you're going to put your traits of characters. That's what I thought I was doing until I realized there was something more going on. Alexa has many orthohumans and transphobicitude, and I think about it, will see anything other than identifying solely and completely with slash as your body at birth as not accepting yourself. Yeah. And in my experience, most people who are that adamant about that are not gonna change their minds, unfortunately. Spooky says, ah, yes, the self, something to be known as totally mutable. Yeah, yeah. I've heard that a lot from phobic people in my life. It's it's rough. It's rough. Poppy says, remember last month when someone on Tumblr got really mad at fiction kind for using the term fiction kind because this is not fiction, this is real reincarnation. I did not know about that. I'm glad I didn't know about that. For me, it is I understand if you're like, hey, this isn't fiction because it really happened to me. I get that. But for me, it's fiction because it's shown on the screen. But being fiction doesn't necessarily make it not real. It's fiction because it's not real in this world. You wouldn't call the movie Human Rhapsody a one-to-one recreation of real life, just like my sources in a one-to-one recreation of my life. Yeah, because your artist or creator or whoever is going to import their own biases on that, especially if there are multiple people, which most things do, to a more or lesser extent, working on it. Um, Even though these are events that happen, someone chose which events to show and which ones to not show. And the attitude the audience should have around it to convey the themes that they wanted to convey. Sean says, I know it's real to us, but it's fictional from an outside perspective, and that's the thing we all have in common. Yeah. Calling it fiction, like fiction folk or whatever other label like that, I agree, isn't calling it not real. It's the word we have to all rally around. If we don't call ourselves fictional or from fiction or fiction folk or fiction kid or whatever, how else are we gonna find each other? How else are we gonna call ourselves? Like people who get pissy with the word non-human because being too human centric, being too human centric because they wouldn't call a human a non-canine. Yeah, because the people around us assume we're human, and being not human specifically is the thing we have all in common because we live in a human society. Yeah, yeah. I love the term non-human for myself. Recently, as I've been getting very cats, I have just called myself an animal. But especially when I don't feel Animalistic, non-human is great. Lighter question, how do you slash the folks in chat feel about fiction lifestyling and source merch? Does it have a place for you guys or no? Kind of complicated feelings on this because part of me is like, ooh, boo, capitalism. And part of me is like, oh, this is really nice that you can find this thing and you can't make everything. And this is the closest thing I want to get to this. My the line I found is that I really do like source merch, but I prefer it by small artists. Mostly because I want to support small artists, mostly because partially because I think it's usually better. And also a lot of merch for my source is not around anymore. There's a specific outfit I wore that I really want to find something similar or make it myself, do something. And it used to be Hot Topic merch, but it's not anymore, and I've not been able to find it secondhand. Rainy says, "In my source, a better merch might be part of it for me. Almost all Avatar merch is cheap garbage, unfortunately." No shade, anyone here likes it, of course. Yeah, there's so many Funko Pops in my source, and I hate them so much. One of the ones in me doesn't even stand up. I despise Funko Pops. The only ones that are kind of fun looking that I've seen, I forgot what they were, but they were the ones that actually deviate from the base. I guess the fun side of merch for me is becoming a vintage comic collector. My wallet hates it though. Yeah, I love collecting my source, and a lot of my Soulbond sources are my special interests. So I definitely understand the collecting. I'm a little bit obsessive about collecting. Panel. Um, Posting ceremonies, 35. Pookie said, "I think Funko Pops are fine. They're beginning to rule the figurine slash merch section, seeing a little more people who don't like the scary eyes would like." Yeah, if they weren't everywhere, I wouldn't mind their existence as much. They really stare you down. Says, "I would like to get merch, but I have a slightly different eye color than Source Me, and the fact that I can't get anything of my actual eye color pisses me off so bad. It's borderline funny." Yeah, yeah. It's a universal law that if you have a slightly nerdy interest, you will eventually acquire a Funko Pop against your will. That has not happened to me yet. Maybe because I am so open about being anti Funko Pop. We'll see if it happens. Probably will. says we have such mixed things about how much pressure there is because on one hand, collecting is a big thing for us and it's so many options. So on the other hand, it feels way too realistic. Yeah, I feel similar too. I'm like I enjoy having things that make me feel like me, and I don't think liking having things is bad, but it can go too far and it can veer into being materialistic. I envy you, Dodec. Imagine not only having a Funko Pop, but it doesn't stand up. We've got about 5 minutes left. I'm okay with going a little over if we have something we're talking about, but it seems like we're kind of wrapping up. So if you have any more questions or things you want to say, this is your chance. Alexa asks, do you ever have to act normal about receiving a gift that is source related? And if so, do you have a funny story about it? No, because well, actually, yes, with my Solon sources, but not with mine. I have actually kept my interest in Buffy secret, even though it's a special interest, because my mom introduced me to it, and I have been afraid that if she knows I'm still interested in it, she would pick up on my lifestyling. But if she doesn't, I can more easily get away with dyeing my hair, dressing as me, doing that kind of thing. So when I move out, I will that will probably happen. But yeah, someone a couple days ago actually, and I was renting. It wasn't anyone from Dark Shadows who was renting, but we had to not pretend that we know this book is actually at least somewhat true to the reality, and we've been wanting to read it for a while. Always talks about designer genders. Definitely source genders. Colic says this personal question. Feel free not to answer. I am going to answer. It's not that personal, and I really do like talking about it. Do you feel like you were Willow before you were introduced to Buffy, and then your mom introduced you to it, and you saw your life and memories on screen, or did you become Willow after, or an in between sort of thing where you didn't realize, but once I saw the memories came back? Yeah, I have always been me. I just didn't know who I was. Um, I was in denial about it for a long time, ever since watching, being like, "Oh, this character's a lot like me. Oh, and she's gay. That makes her way more like me. Oh, that's weird." Um, Even like I had a big denial period. Um, and I think about when you're reincarnated, you're not supposed to know because the memories are gone. Um, but yeah, when I saw it, I started putting the pieces together just about this character is really similar to me. And when I look at her, she makes me feel things. I had debated if I had a crush on myself without, but I was like, I don't know because it feels different than a crush. Um, and then once a lot of I predicted things that would happen in like a Noe Mata way. It was after I realized and I that I had gotten memories. It was I realized at the worst timing of watching the series, and re after watching one of the worst things that happened to me, I actually did remember that, and I was like, "Oh, there's no turning back now." Do I look like my actor, or is kind of uncanny thing watching an actor play you. How I look in Source was exactly how I looked, except, like, I wasn't Hollywood done up. I'm sure I had acne and that kind of thing. Um, and the same for my soul bonds, which is really funny because in Dark Shadows, all of the actors play the same character, and they have told me, yeah, that was, how it was in our lives. There would just be people that looked like you. Sometimes that just happened, which is so strange. Um, but yeah, I do look like my actor. I am cringe, but I am free. Yes, coffee. You're welcome, Calixa. Does anyone have anything else? I'll give a couple minutes. And then I'll wrap up, give everyone time to get ready for the closing ceremonies. I need to decide if I'm gonna go home and how much I'm gonna stay here for. I have enough time to get home before the closing ceremonies. You're welcome, guys. Where do you find local Ontopunk people? I would say same route as trying finding other alter humans because most Ontopunks are going to be alter human, and other alter humans are going to be the people who are going to be open to that. Like I said, how do you find local alter humans? Um, it's difficult. I have heard people say they have had luck with just being open about who they are, like actually mentioning their alter human identities. Um, when it's relevant, maybe like wearing gear and that kind of thing. Um, sure there are online meetups too, but Yeah, I gotta get back to the prayer. Says, thanks so much for hosting this panel again. It's so invigorating to hear from other fiction folk, especially with self-expression and tailoring daily life around fictionhood. I read some stuff on your site about fiction and lifestyle before, and I've been to the other con panel. This topic is so important, and I'm glad others get to experience it too. Thank you. I have a s I forgot to, put out all the links. Oh my god. Um, Putting them in panel questions, my website link is on there. Damn it. Actually, it's plural, good, I can't do anything about it, oh well. Thank you, guys. Yeah, I'd really love to see how this kind of thing evolves. It makes me really happy. Okay, I think I am going to go ahead and close this out. Seems like most people are heading out, and I think I'm gonna go home for the closing ceremony. So, thank you guys. I'll see you later.